Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the political situation as it stands today. We'll be talking about the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif as he plans to go to court tomorrow. The hearing, the case will be heard tomorrow on whether the conditions imposed by the government can actually be imposed legally or not. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the JUIF roadblocks, that the dharna that has now translated into blocks, blocking roads by the protesters, and how is the government proposing to deal with that? What kind of ramifications can that kind of a protest have for everyday life? We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the economic situation. I have with me Javed Siddique, who's a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Zubair Ghori, who's a political analyst. Thank you for being with us today. And Barrister Umar Malik, who's a legal expert. Thank you for being with us today. Javed Sahab, like I said, as far as the political situation is concerned, of course, the court will determine whether the condition imposed by the government on the former Prime Minister is actually legitimate or not. What are your thoughts on this, considering why was it imposed in the first place? I mean, considering the fact that there has been all this debate about whether the former Prime Minister would be allowed to go or not. We've also discussed it a couple of times. How do you look at this condition? Do you think it's more about the narrative rather than any hopes of actually the PMLN and the former Prime Minister actually accepting the term, accepting the condition, or do you think that it has to do with the narrative?
I think a lot of politicking is going on right now from both sides, from PTI government side and the PMLN side both. All circumstantial evidence clearly indicate that Nawaz Sharif, the former Prime Minister, has to go abroad, and you have seen, and we have seen, voices being raised from the government camp. I mean, PMLQ, which is an ally of the PTI, both in Punjab and at the federal level, MQM, another ally, and all these other people, they have raised the voice and they are demanding that Mr. Nawaz Sharif, the former Prime Minister, be allowed to go abroad without condition. So the government camp itself is divided. It looks that there's a tremendous pressure on the government and Mr. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister, that Nawaz Sharif should be allowed to go abroad for treatment.
Because of his health.
Because of his health. And Prime Minister himself admitted that the former Prime Minister is critically ill. So there is no justification for attaching any condition, I mean, from moral perspective. From legal perspective.
Do you think that, you know, once there was all these reports that, okay, he's being allowed to go, and the government is, sorry, the government's actually going to, you know, is raising a green flag and agreeing to those conditions, and then this huge condition,
billion rupees as a bond, surety bond.
Yeah. Which, do you think that makes sense, considering the fact that, you know, even if this condition was not imposed, in the eventuality that the former Prime Minister does not return, there is that option of his bail being revoked and his assets being seized anyway?
I think it was too much, and the government is overplaying its hand. I think if Mr. Nawaz Sharif had not returned, his politics is at stake.
Right.
You know, he has a huge following in Pakistan. He has been the Prime Minister 3 times, and his party has...
Then why? Do you think it's about narrative building? It's about
satisfying
the voters at this point?
It is politicking because the PTI government would have used this card.
Right.
That here the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, has left the country and he has given a surety bond. And now what they are saying, well, you know, Hussain Haqqani didn't come back. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's 2 sons have not come back. The former Finance Minister Ishaq Dar has not returned, and the courts are asking us why they are not being brought back for the trial.
As far as you know, the former Finance Minister is concerned, Dar Saab is concerned, we've seen how that has affected his political career.
Yes,
and that itself is a huge, like you said, you know, for the former Prime Minister leading a political party like the PMLN, that itself is a huge condition.
A condition, but also a big price for the PML and leadership. So therefore, I think the Prime Minister who has been allowed this bail for treatment only for 8 weeks, and he's left with only 4 or 6 weeks. So he has to come back in any case, because he is not going to destroy his politics, in Pakistan. He's not going to
Let me
disappoint.
go to Zubair Saab. I'll come back to Zubair Saab, but they were probably, I mean, do you think that there was actual expectation that the former Prime Minister would accept the condition? Or was it doled out with the expectation that it would be refused, and then, and then we go back to the narrative question?
Well, both. They have. The government has played a very tricky card, and I agree with the Javed Saab that there is a kind of politicking behind it. But there is another perspective behind this. That is the history. I'm not talking about Ishaq Dar Saab or the two sons of the ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. I'm talking about a similar case that was of retired General Pervez Musharraf. When his case was presented in the court, and incidentally, his case was being pled by the now sitting law minister, Barrister Farooq Naseem Saab. He was his attorney, and he said that Pervez Musharraf Saab is ill, and B, he wanted to see his ailing mother, who was in Dubai, and he will be back pretty soon. And he promised before the court, and that was the PMLN government. So this is a history that we are treating at the moment. So once bitten, twice shy. The government is again saying, covering its political flanks, because its whole narrative is built on this perspective or this thing or this line of action that we are going to nab the financial culprits. And if they let the people, including the ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, go scot-free, that whole narrative is disturbed. Their own electorate or the electoral college, they might be asking questions, very stiff questions might be, and that have been already asked by the way, in the last meeting of the cabinet, that how we are going to respond to the electorate. So A, they have covered the electorate and they have played twice, two-sided, and the second-sided, even if they think that, the courts think that this is a problem in this condition, they can always strike it down. Then we can go back to our electorate and say that, look, we have made that, we didn't let them go, we just put a condition so that he can come back, and now since the court have already done that, so we'll take refuge behind them. The same is the case the PMLN took in that case of General Pervez Musharraf, that whenever you ask them that you have let him go, what do you answer? Why do you answer about that? They simply say that we didn't. Chaudhry Nisar Saab many times said that, many other of the PMLN leaders said that. This is a kind of a similar story. The history is being repeated once again. So all will be hunky-dory, all stakes will be covered if this condition will be set aside by the court. Court will take the burden, and this echoes the statement given by the Islamabad High Court Chief Justice Atar Minallah Sahab, that why do you bring in all these things to the court? Why do you want to use our shoulders? So if this condition is set aside, again, the court will be taken this responsibility, and the court says that. I'm just thinking, loud thinking.
Right,
if the court does not, if the court does not set it aside, then the ball will go back again to the PDI's court.
Barrister Saab, what do you think, legally speaking? Do you think the court will choose to, either, do you think that they may step away, like you said, like, Dr. Zubair said, as far as, sorry, as far as that statement is concerned, I mean, the court may choose to step away from this and decide that, it's not in the purview of the court at this time. Do you think it's possible, or do you think the court will go ahead and adjudicate one way or another as far as this condition is concerned? They might say that it's impossible, and by virtue of that, strike it null and void. Do you think that will happen? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, since the matter is sub judice, and very recently the honorable courts have stated that if the matter is sub judice, then we should not be commenting on the outcome of the case. But I think.
But what's your opinion generally?
Yeah, generally the opinion is that once the bail is granted, and the Mia Nawaz Sharif and also the Mariam Nawaz Sharif in the other case, they have submitted the surety bonds, and especially very recently in the judgment of Islamabad High Court, when the bail was granted, the surety bonds have been submitted to the satisfaction of the court. And now after that, just for the ECL thing, they are asking the surety bond thing again, just because to satisfy their voters only. We all know that Mia Nawaz Sharif came back before the elections when he knew that he is going directly to the jail. He did not even go home. The Mariam Nawaz, his daughter, she didn't even go home. They went directly to the jail, and they were there. They knew that they are going to jail. Still, they came back to Pakistan. And now even he's 3 times Prime Minister of Pakistan. He has remained 3 times Prime Minister of Pakistan, and he has a legacy. I don't think that he's going to just just because of this case, he won't be coming back.
But it goes back to that narrative question, right? I mean, as far as accountability is concerned, as far as bringing back the money is concerned, if, for example, I mean, of course, you know, it was quite, it would have been quite unexpected if the former Prime Minister would have accepted this condition. But in the eventuality, had it happened, the government would then have been able to say that, look, one, he has that kind of money to throw away like this, so therefore their narrative of corruption, and second, that look, we're bringing it back this way. So they've tried, you know, isn't it playing two hands, you know, with one stone, or if I'm mixing up the metaphor, what do you think about that?
I think you know, Mia Nawaz Sharif and also the companies they have, and you know, they have a lot of assets here. And if the judgment is passed against them, the properties can be auctioned. Their all properties can be
But
auctioned.
they can be, but correct me if I'm
recover the
wrong,
money.
they can be, that can happen in any case, right? Once he goes away on bail and if he does not return, the court can, one, revoke that bail, and even, and two, you know, seize his properties, because we're hearing there is all that, excuse me, I have a very bad throat, I'm sorry, but if we compare his case to the former finance minister, there is all this talk about his house being seized, his assets being seized. That itself, that option always remains open.
It's always there. But now I think this is the narrative game, because very recently the Prime Minister has been saying that I'm not going to give NRO to anybody. He has been saying it. He went to America and he said that I'm going to take off the AC and, you know, like all the facilities being given to Nawaz Sharif.
But do you think he's afraid that this can be seen as maybe a de facto NRO then? Do you think that's the problem? That's why he's moving
I think
trying to, you know,
all this debate which
move
is
towards
being
the narrative.
created, I think all this debate which is being created, narrative game and all that, and all the people who are advising the government that you know, for these bonds and all that, they don't know. Basically, I think they are not realizing this, that their own government doctor, the hospital was the government hospital. They submitted a report before the court and stated very categorically that we might, I mean, I won't be, you know, like using those words, but we might lose Mia Nawaz Sharif. You know, it is very serious condition of Mia Nawaz Sharif, and now the people who are giving this advice to Mr. Prime Minister that take bonds and, you know, just wasting time. Very recently, even PMLQ's leaders, they have said that, you know, once something happens to Mia Nawaz Sharif, the whole responsibility will be of Mr. Imran Khan only, singly. No, not anybody else, not the ministers and not everybody or from the cabinet. So I think Mr. Khan has to take it very
Do
seriously.
you think he's afraid of the floodgates? Because if it happens, then, you know, we're talking about the former president, Asif Ali Zardari Saab also. If he's unwell, and there are reports, I mean, I don't know for certain, I don't think any of us do, but if he's actually unwell and that comes out and there's a board and there's a report, then they'll have to let him go also. So then, of course, if there are both of them go, the two major political parties, then where does the narrative go? Where does the PTI stand for accountability? And considering the situation where we are as far as economically, you know, maybe the government will do better, and we all hope that it does, because it's been a year so far, and we have to give them that latitude and that time to make things better, because of course they landed in the situation that they did land. But what about the narrative then?
Well, I think, you know, like I said, that there are government doctors, and, you know, if somebody's medical condition is such that he, you know, that we might lose him or any leader, you know, I think
But
economically.
what about the politics? I mean, politically, I'll come back to you for the legal side. I'm going to go to Javed Saab with this. Javed Saab, what about the politics then? Of course, that will take a blow if, you know, the former Prime Minister, the former President also follows him and leaves.
I don't think they are going to leave. I mean,
As in, so you think, like, you know, Baz Saab is saying, there is no question of Nawaz Sharif Saab not coming back.
of course, there's no question, because Nawaz Sharif has huge stake in politics still, and probably his party is the strongest party, opposition party at the moment, and they have a massive following in the province of Punjab,
Right.
also in other provinces as well. So he knows that he has invested a lot in politics of Pakistan, and if he does that, I mean, if he doesn't come back and puts his reputation at risk, then in that case, Mr. Shahbaz Sharif or his daughter, Maryam Nawaz, who has emerged as a star after Nawaz Sharif, you know, and she's likely to be the successor to her father, you know, she'll be a prime minister, former prime minister's move not to come back, or a decision not to come back, will destroy her politics and her political career which I think Mr. Nawaz Sharif would never like. He despises the fact that his daughter should not become the successor, or she should not emerge as the leader after him. So he is not going to take that risk. He will come back. But however, I think the PTI government must have shown large-heartedness in this case.
In this, I mean, in these conditions will probably be, not do the government any credit at this point.
They're not going to do it, and I think it's my guess that the High Court probably might allow the former Prime Minister to go without submitting a surety bond. If that happens, hypothetically I'm speaking, then I think the PTI government will be relieved to a great extent that
Because of course, then it wouldn't be up to them.
it
which
is
what we
not on their
discussed
shoulders, and it will be, they'll say, oh, we submit to the decision and the verdict of the court.
But as far
we
as
haven't done it.
As far as former President Musharraf is concerned, there was no question of a surety bond at that time, right? The PMLN didn't try and float that idea.
Yes, they didn't. Because, Mr. Musharraf had a different background. I mean, legally
Right.
speaking, but otherwise his connections with the military and, the background and the way he was, his caravan was diverted from Chak Shahzad to the CMH Rawalpindi, and there he was admitted that he is seriously ill and he has a heart problem, and so he was admitted, hospitalized. So that was a different trajectory altogether. Here in this case, Mr. Nawaz Sharif, this issue of a deal, because there is a background to it. Back in 1999, when he was removed from power, he was in jail, and there were serious cases being tried against him, and he cut a deal with the then military leader
Right.
and went to Saudi Arabia.
But like
everything
Barrister
is
Umar
being-
is saying, the fact that he returned after knowing that when he steps out, he will be taken to prison, and he came back with his daughter, itself shows that in this time, he's not going to abscond, or, I mean, it shows...
There's no question of his absconding. I don't think it is going to happen. However, the PTI government is trying to build this narrative that there's a background to it. I mean, Mr. Nawaz Sharif has been cutting deals with the governments and with powers to be, and he might do it again.
But we've been hearing again and again, Zubair Sahab, we've been hearing again and again about,
Yeah.
an NRO, whether it's a, even if it's not an actual NRO, a de facto NRO. And we've been hearing no one, but, no one short of the Prime Minister coming out and issuing a denial every now and then and saying that I will not give an NRO. This situation doesn't seem to be, to anybody, it doesn't seem to be like an NRO situation.
Yes.
It seems to have to do with his health, really.
Yes, it is.
And the fact that doctors are, of the unanimous opinion, like, Barrister Saab also said that he needs to travel for his treatment.
Well, let me try to play devil's advocate here. We are all talking about the same thing on the same lines. Let me first take this argument that he came back when he knew that he was going to go to jail straight, and we should take this example for his future course of action as well. But my point here is, if he had not come back at that point in time, he would have lost all legal battle. He would not have appealed against his conviction. He would not have fought his case, as one of the cases he has got already the relief when the sentence has already been suspended. The other is already in the Islamabad High Court, and he might get relief over there. So if he had not come back, he would have been declared absconder, and of course the loss of the political mileage as well. So this argument has a slight backing behind it. So this time he does not have that much of a thing. He's already fighting the case. He has already been given this kind of a bail by the High Court, and that can be extended by the Punjab government. And if this illness is not as it appears, then he can always extend his stay over there. But coming back to the point of the PTI, I think they are playing with the hounds and running with the hares. They want to have the best of the both worlds. They do not want to take any responsibility on their shoulders.
But what does this
Look,
commission achieve, really?
they are not achieving anything. They are not achieving anything, but they don't want to put in
Except
any
allow-
negative
yes,
basket
but it might
for future.
But it's allowing the PMLN to build on the narrative that look, their leader is unwell.
That is already there.
That itself-
This decision does not add upon anything on this.
And there's a lot
But
being
if,
said, like
if
you
they,
said, you said let's play the devil's advocate, and there's a lot, there's a comparison being made with Sushma Swaraj and how the Indian minister who refused to go abroad for treatment, and of course we know that she unfortunately also passed away. And that leaders do that. Unfortunately, there is that comparison that's going around as far as with the PTI supporters and the PMLN. How far, I mean, do you agree with that kind of? Of course, we've had a debate before also about how a third-time prime minister or not should be equated with any normal person, any any layman who isn't going to be any prisoner in the prison who isn't allowed such conditions.
But that's the comparison, the analogy that has been drawn, to put it very mildly, is symptomatic. We should be showing sympathy with the person who is ailing, and
Right.
we have had a very bitter experience with his wife when some of the party elders from different parties, they were treating her ailment as being showcase. They were saying that she's already dead, you have to bring her back and all that. I don't want to repeat that whole bitter
Very
experiences.
unfortunate,
It leaves a
yes.
very bad
Very
taste
bad
in your
taste,
mouth.
yes.
But the point here is, what is the harm? What is the harm if the PTI government has put in this condition and within 2-3 days time the court sets it aside? So everybody will be having good points. It's a win-win situation for everybody. They will say, the people and say that this is a completely medical issue and we have fought our case on the legal grounds and we got the relief from the courts. We have not been given any NRO. That's a positive thing for them. And for the PTI as well. Look, we haven't set anybody free. We have put a condition there and we accept and respect the court's decision. So it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Right.
And if Prime Minister, may Allah grant him health and speedy recovery, he comes back to Pakistan, and then they both will have this kind of a equal situation. At this point in time, if you grant any one party any kind of a skewed leverage, they will have a negative implications in the future. The whole structure, the whole political structure will be affected. Why PMLN is steadfast on that? Because if they accept it, the political narrative will be seriously damaged, that we accept that we have done this corruption and we have accepted
Right.
that we have taken this money and we have given it to the government as a bond, and then we have gone out. So they will not have any place to hide their faces. So both the sides are again taking the words, borrowing Javed Sir from you. Both the sides are politicking on this issue.
Right, and they're throwing
Not
the court.
PMLN,
They're throwing the
but
ball in the
PTI
court's,
also.
court as far as the decision is concerned.
Yes.
But Barrister Saab, as far as I won't ask you to comment on what will happen, of course, tomorrow. But what's your take? I mean, is there a precedent as far as the court actually deciding against a condition that's been imposed by the government? Do you think that has that happened before? Of course, the court can strike it null and void, but has it happened before? Has the court done so?
I think if we see the case of, like we quoted that General Musharraf case and some other cases as well.
But there was no condition
There was
there.
no condition at all. So this is what, there is no absolutely, especially in such kind of cases, there is no precedent of putting such a condition. And I don't see any reason that, it's just a political reason that we discussed earlier, that they have imposed this condition.
But as far as separation of powers is concerned, let me ask you, a question as far as the theory of it is concerned. The government chooses to impose this condition, and if the court intervenes and holds it null and void, as far as the ECL is concerned, isn't it the government's domain completely?
No.
No.
Once the executive is always subject to the decisions of the judiciary. So
Right.
judiciary is there to see and to interpret the constitution. So they have to see the fundamental rights of somebody like Mian Nawaz Sharif or any other person before the court, and then they can interpret the constitution and to protect this, safeguard the interest of that, to protect the fundamental
So
right of.
essentially, they'll have to see whether the condition itself, impacts his rights
His rights,
and
exactly.
liberties.
And if they think that this condition is affecting and infringing the rights of Mian Nawaz Sharif, then of course they are going to strike it down and say that he can travel without any condition.
Right. But do you think that there will be, so to speak, an effect of the court stepping into this political effect? Let's leave the legal side of it. Do you think that courts actually allowing him to go of course it will save the government from having to deal with the issue at all. But as far as the judiciary is concerned, do you see it having any adverse effects if one way or the other, if the judiciary chooses either this or that?
Well, I think the judiciary is there to, like I said, to protect the interest of the citizens
And they have to look at
interpret
the law,
constitution. They
and
have to
at
look
the
at the
end of
law
the
and
day,
decide
just-
it accordingly.
right.
And decide, judiciary for judiciary, I think there is nothing, I mean, anything. Judiciary is not into like politics or
doesn't
any other
matter,
thing.
right.
So I think for them it doesn't really matter. The only thing is that the decision, like is according to the constitution, and that's it.
Then it doesn't matter, right?
doesn't really
exactly.
matter.
Javed Saab, as far as the political situation, considering we've seen how the dharna has ended with a road blocking, which is being talked about, do you think that's a safe exit? A strategy for the JUF to disperse, so to speak, or do you think that there is more to it? There can be, there will be in the next few days, we will see more blockage, we will see more effects of this, and that it will have any impact on the government at all?
I don't think so. It is going to create any impact on the government, because road blocking is going to create a lot of opposition, and it is going to earn the wrath of the people, because if you are going to block the roads and
Right.
common people are affected, the traffic is suspended,
Gee.
and these kind of things happen. Inconvenience is caused to the people, to the pedestrians, to the motorists. That is going to go against JUI, and I think they will earn the displeasure of the general public. So it's not going to pay them. But as far as this sit-in at Peshawar Mode was very effective, and
Was it?
It was for at least 3 to 4 days, because it was a very good show, impressive show, and Maulana was able to at least gather 50 to 60,000
Right.
people here, very devoted, and they sat there for almost 11 days, and they braved all the tough conditions of weather, and they stayed there. So they are very resolute, and I think they're the loyal followers of the JUI.
But what does it achieve? I mean, of course, we have the JUIF come out and say that they will
I think it was
take nothing short of the
Yeah,
resignation of the
it
Prime
was,
Minister.
basically-
So what have they taken then?
I think it was a mistake or a miscalculation on the part of Maulana Fazlur Rahman. Probably he was very confident that PPP and PMLN and other political parties will join hands, they will support him, and probably they will mobilize their own supporters, and this dharna or the gathering here at Peshawar Mode will turn into millions. And that will bring a great pressure on the sitting government as well as the other institutions, the law enforcing agencies and other institutions. But that didn't happen. I think the PTI, the PPP and PMLN didn't live up to the expectations of Maulana. And ANP, which appeared on the stage, I mean, Sfandyar Wali came only for once to
Right.
address the crowd, and it disappeared. The only person who stood by Maulana till the last day was Mahmood Khan Achakzai of Pakhtunkhwa Milli Awami Party, which is a small party and a regional party, and they don't have any support, massive support, people support in all the 4 provinces. So therefore, I think Maulana had no other option to call off this dharna or sit-in, and then he announced the plan B, and probably this plan B is not going to work, it is not going to be effective, it is going to peter out with the passage of time. And I think Maulana, he's telling, the JUI chief is telling some of the political friends and allies that he has been assured by powers to be that you should go from here and you just disperse, and probably some of your conditions that holding of fresh elections, this is what we are hearing, could be possible in the next year. And that's why he says that I have been able to achieve the objective of this protest march or Azadi March.
Right.
So he seems to be satisfied. He's trying to give an impression that someone who matters in this country, they have assured him that he's going to be given something, some reward has to be given to him, and that's why he has called it off and is going back.
Zubair Sahab, we saw how the Chaudhry brothers were they tried to convince the Maulana. They were part of that committee also. As far as the politics of the Chaudhrys are concerned, the PMLQ is concerned, we've seen how they've been. We talked about this, that they have supported the stance of the former Prime Minister as far as going for treatment is concerned. What do you think, in your opinion? I mean, what's behind this? What do they hope to achieve? Because we saw that before, when the government was being formed, they were very much in the wheeling and dealing also. What is of course they're on the one hand part of the government, but why is this happening? What's your take on that?
Well, Chaudhrys are very shrewd politicians of this country. They have never been out of the government. They have always been a part of the government. But before commenting on the Chaudhrys' politics, let me just throw a light on the recent dharnas or the sit-ins or the
Right.
protests that have
Please.
happened all over the world. After the Arab Spring, which turned violent in many ways, if you look at almost all of the sit-ins or the protests all over the world, they have not been able to achieve their results through peaceful means. Even you look at the PTI's 126 days dharna, they might have potentially achieved something, but nothing had potentially happened out of that 126 days dharna. They
But
later
they
had
did-
to come to another sit-in. They were given this place near the Faizabad Chowk. Now, you look at the recent developments. If you look at the Hong Kong strikes that have been going on for 6-7 months now, there have been yellow jacket strikes in France for more than 2 years now. There have been 99% strikes in the USA. Nothing has happened. There have been strikes against President Trump. Nothing has happened. There have been strikes against 3 years ago the Prime Minister Modi's economic actions. Nothing has happened. There have been strikes in Philippines. There have been strikes in Australia. Nothing has happened. So things have changed. When we study conflict management, I'm a humble student of conflict management, these non-violent conflict movements used to deliver results in the world. But now
They don't.
they don't, unfortunately. The governments do not listen to them unless they turn violent. Now, if you look at the Maulana's dharna, and he had good numbers, and he had very good intentions to go to some other parts to march upon the D Chowk or the parliament, had he approached this course of action, had he taken this course of action, there might have been violence. Might have been strike against the law enforcement agency. There might have been some killings, some people losing their precious lives. Then there would have been the turmoil. But the good sense has prevailed. He has registered his protest. But given the whole situation in the whole of the world, the non-violent the protests are not yielding results. As far as the Chaudhrys are concerned, I'm a great fan of their politics. They have the great knack of always being in the politics. So they also do not want to be standing beside the party if, God forbid, something happens to ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. They are living in Gujarat, the central Punjab. Gujarat and Gujranwala is their surrounding area. They don't want to lose sympathy in that region, because PMLN has a great sympathy in that region. Of course, PTI has also gained grounds, but if you look at the election results of the last election, they have hardly been able to win seats in that area, except for one MNA seat in Kamuki. They have not been able to win those seats from those areas. Their important stalwarts have lost, like in Sialkot, Dar Sahib has also lost it. So it is still a stronghold of PMLN, and they want to keep that sympathy in. They want to go with the PMLN at this point in time because they wanted that sympathy. And if something bad happens, they don't want to be blamed. And in the future course of action, if any midterm election, if they are planning about this, then they will have this strong case in their hand that, look, we were standing by your side. And you never know. Pakistani politics is a game of possibilities. You never know. In the next election, PMLN and PMLQ are standing together. And
What about all this?
the elections.
Before when the former Prime Minister, the former and his brother, there was, there's always been, well, if not, there has been a conflict as per the media is concerned. Let's keep it at that. There has been talk about it. There has been, there is of course the factor that there is the former Prime Minister's daughter on the one hand, his brother on the other hand, and the fact that while he's been in jail, who's actually leading the party. Do you think that there are chances that perhaps that, if he leaves for his health, there can be a sort of, fragmentation within the political party, considering that there are, of course, conflicts, there are differences, there's no denying that.
Well, in every political party, there can be more than one schools of thought. And in this political party, in the recent developments, we have seen at least two big schools of thought. If Nawaz Sharif Saab has been able, would be able to go out of the country for his treatment, the narrative that Shahbaz Sharif was carrying of consolation, of
Right.
cooperation, of extending arm of help and hope and support, that will gain ground. But the moment Nawaz Sharif Saab gains back his health and comes back, and Maryam Nawaz Sahiba also gets the bail out of the jail, of the NAB custody, then that narrative can bounce back once again. So it's a kind of a balancing act between both these narratives. And this kind of a narrative is also going within PTI also. There are very staunch eagles who are saying, no, we should not let ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif go out. And the others who are conciliatory, more kind of a cooperative.
But
Look,
as far
we
as
should
the
let them
PTI
go.
is concerned, of course, they're in power at this time. And if the former Prime Minister leaves, there are no two opinions. Gee, Umar Saab, there's no two opinions about the fact that who is the real leader in the PMLN. It's always been Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif. And if he is allowed to go because of his health, whether for a short period of time or not, do you think there are chances that there can be, of course, his brother will have to hold the party together if Maryam Nawaz is in jail and we don't know when she will come out, whether there will be a bail or not. In that situation, of course, the Chaudhurys, it might be relevant how they play their hand. Isn't that true? Within Punjab, of course.
Within Punjab, well, I think first of all, like if we see very recent past, like from the beginning of the cases after Panama leaks and all that, we have seen that the line of Mia Nawaz Sharif has been very clear, and all the leaders have been following the same. All the leaders, Shahbaz Sharif has been given his opinion on many times. Even Hamza Shahbaz Sharif has been giving his opinion, and they do have a different opinion from Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif. But
There's
we have
no
seen
secret
that.
that there are two blocks within PMLN, isn't it true?
Well, there are blocks, but we have seen that once Maryam Nawaz or even Mia Nawaz Sharif says something, all the leaders follow that. They do, participate in the meetings, and they give their opinion in the meetings, and even on the media they have said some of the things. But we have seen the line which is drawn by Mia Nawaz Sharif is always followed by all the leaders. And Chaudhry is like we have already discussed that since 2002, and they are in power. And for the future, I think they are also looking on the things that even some in-house change, and they have a number in Punjab which can help them to become even the chief minister of Punjab.
Right,
So
right.
especially the Pervez Elahi.
And like we discussed, they're very shrewd. They're no strangers to wheeling and dealing. So there is that that if there is that opening, they may take it. Isn't that true?
Exactly. I think if there is some slot for even the chief minister, I think Mr. Pervez Elahi would not reject that.
I think there have been some rumors or conspiracies. Javed Saab may like to comment on that. And initially, when this government was formed after the 2018 elections, that PMLN, from some quarters of the PMLN, this offer was extended to the Chaudhurys that we may join hands and you may take the chief ministership and we can join and make a government. But they refused, and they decided to join the PTI government, which is also, we must all understand, is standing on a very thin majority, both in the center and in Punjab. I think 7 is the number in Punjab, and 11 or 12 is the number in the federal government. So if PMLQ decides to change hands at some point in time, that will be a watershed mark in the recent history of Pakistani politics.
Javed Saab, do you agree?
I
Do
think
you agree with that statement?
I believe that the whole politics and the political dynamic that we are witnessing in Pakistan, everybody agrees that the current government and all other political players are not independent, and probably strings are being pulled from somewhere, and from where. So the PMLQ has an important role to play. What we have heard, it's a street talk, and it is a talk that is going on in political circles, that if the PTI leadership headed by Mr. Imran Khan fails, then the powers to be want to change the face, and probably they would be relying more on the PMLQ leaders and the followers of the PMLQ rather than again trying PMLN or People's Party. So we were hearing for quite some time that if Imran Khan doesn't deliver, if he is not successful and he's not able to carry out the promises that he has made to the people of Pakistan, then he could be replaced by another government, and it will be a government of PMLQ.
But Javed sir, don't you think that their number is very small?
They
PMLQ's
are.
Right,
number?
that's what
You
I
know,
want to talk about.
but
Do you
you
think
see-
that they're still in a position to play
Very
that
small,
kind of
no, no,
significant
13
role?
but you
seats
see,
there, 7 seats
who are
there.
the PTI people? If you look, you know,
Or are they relying
lots
on,
of
on,
people
on
relying
other
on some other support.
or joining
and
them,
you know,
and
they
that
can
is
change
breaking-
sides.
Right, that's
they
what I'm
can
talking
change
about.
sides.
But can they now, I mean, with that law, I mean, is it possible? I'll come back to you. Ji, Bashsab, is it possible now for sitting members to switch
The floor
sides?
crossing, yeah.
No, floor crossing
I
is
don't,
not.
that's not really possible at this time, right?
Floor crossing is not allowed. Like after that law has been passed, like
Right.
the politician can get disqualified. Like if he does so.
So what
and-
kind
No,
of,
no.
what kind of,
you know,
as far as wheeling, dealing
I
is
think
concerned, what-
wheeling dealing
Have you
is
seen the
possible.
recent Senate elections?
You know, some of the yes, and
enough,
then
fair
you know, there are members in PMLN who could vote for a person
Right,
other
right,
than
right.
the PTI guys. You
Of
know,
course, and it's
the
a-
hardliners PTI
right,
people.
it's a confidential vote, of
So
course.
therefore, I think all things are possible in this fluid situation that we are facing at the political level.
Well, I think we are taking PTI government a bit too lightly at the
Right.
moment.
I was
they
wondering
are,
when
yeah.
somebody would actually
yeah,
say
they
that.
are sitting pretty solid, and there is no shakiness from their
And
from
they've,
their
as far as
attitude.
Maulana Sahib, the JUIF
Yes.
protest
And they are
is
feeling
concerned,
very
they've
strong
been
after
very,
that.
very,
Of
you know,
course.
they've taken the heat
No, no,
quite well. They've
okay,
managed to
but-
hold
but,
up
you
under
know,
pressure.
I think Maulana was basically hitting and aiming at the PTI government as well as some other institutions. And so they brought these two, the PTI and the institutions, on the same page, and their relations were cemented by this onslaught of Maulana. But after the Maulana's protest has subsided, and this threat is no more there, it's not looming large on their heads, probably a new dynamic will
Yes.
take place. And therefore, I think it's not going to be a permanent thing. And the political situation in Pakistan keeps changing. And I don't think so that we could see the same situation next year because we are going very close to the end of the year, and next year 2020 is going to be there knocking at our doors, and we'll see what happens next year, whether the PTI will be able to stay and will remain strong, because
But as
you know,
far as the PTI government at this point is concerned, it really will depend on their economic progress.
Yes.
And
Yes.
also, you know, as far as their accountability narrative is concerned. Do you
no,
think that
accountability narrative, yes. But on the economic issue is the most vital issue. It is hitting everyone. Every person in this country is hit by or affected by it. The inflation is hitting people very hard. And the people are very unhappy with the performance of this government on the economic front. And they are saying that they have not been able to manage it. And I think the major criticism against the PTI government by PMLN and PPP is that they have mismanaged the economy. And by bringing this IMF and World Bank people and forming a team, economic management team, is not capable of resolving the problems, economic problems of Pakistan. And I think the PTI government has to deliver on this front. If they don't, and the people do not get a relief in a short while, probably the resentment and the anger will rise against the PTI government.
Right, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us, Javed Siddique Saab. Thank you for your time. Dr. Zubair Ghauri, thank you for joining us. Barrister Omar Malik, thank you for being with us. As far as the government is concerned, I'm sure that as the public, they're quite relieved as far as the end of the JUIF Dharna, but it remains to be seen as far as the government is concerned, the economic situation and their progress in the next couple of months, in the next year, will really determine where the government stands at this point. Of course, it's making all the efforts for economy to self-sustain, for there to be, for the inflation to decrease, and that really will be what will depend, the governments will depend on, their sustainability will depend on, and really their narrative will depend on. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.